How's it going, college football fans? It is your boy, the Jared Sawyer, coming to you here with another edition and another season of Cows and Quacks. We're going on season 6. Joined always is my co-host, Mr. Tim Alcorn, the OG Texan. Tim, say what's up to the fans, man.
Man, hey, what's up, brother? Just out here in the Mile High City, getting ready for a great year. I think both our teams have great things to look forward to.
I really think so, too. And before we get into more of that, just making everyone aware. Tim, you're up mile high. I'm all the way down a mile lower than you. I'm here at the beach in San Diego, California now. Got an opportunity with my company to open up a region here. And so we are out of Oregon, as the East Coasters would call it. And we are now here in the beautiful city of San Diego. So we are.
It is beautiful. A little expensive, but
yeah, it is a little expensive. Little expensive here. The whole West Coast. I include Denver in that region. It's definitely getting pricey these days. Definitely getting pricey. But beyond that, it's getting pricey for college football too. So,
yeah. I mean, the Supreme Court ruled, and I believe the Supreme Court ruled right that these quote-unquote amateur players, which we both know they're not amateurs, they're there to play professional college football, are allowed to make money off their name. And I believe we're both in agreement that that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, for instance, Kayvon Thibodeau last night just inked a deal with American Airlines. He also has a shoe deal with Nike. You know, you talk about the have and have-nots of college football, right? And you're starting to see that disparity, in the Pac-12 a lot. You have a school like Washington who has a really, outside the rivalry, they have a proud tradition of being very competitive. They won a national championship in the 90s. They've always been a team out west, along with USC, that people have looked at being competitive. The difference now, though, is Oregon has a lot that Washington just doesn't have as far as pockets go. And where Washington is in their head thinking, okay, we have Alaska Airlines, Costco, some of these other people that can come in, those sponsors aren't necessarily willing to shell out money the way Oregon's willing to negotiate for these players.
Right.
And so, it's interesting to see. I mean, Texas, Oklahoma's going to be in the same boat, which is a lot of the reason why the SEC gobbled them up. I mean, so as we see things evolve and kids take advantage of NIL, you're going to see, like we were talking about before, a huge shift, I believe and you believe, in college football conferences. The SEC taking over and the talk of the Pac-12, ACC, and Big Ten joining the alliance is just the tip of the iceberg as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the big boys always eat up the little boys, and there's always a bigger fish, and probably 30, possibly up to 40 teams will be in a super conference. I don't know if I'm sure that the NCAA will try to make it NCAA 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 with the Division 2 or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I think the NCAA will try to hang on because they want to still yield power and they want to make a lot of money. And I believe, as much as I believe that the big conferences will do it on their own, I've thought about it, and I think they'll probably still negotiate with the NCAA to do it. We'll see.
Yeah, I can't imagine the NCAA. I mean, they've been power hungry and money hungry this long. That's not just going to change, right? I mean, so they're going to try to find a way to keep their talents in the money as much as they can. But I will say this is definitely the step in the right direction for a lot of these players who come from nothing and get a chance now to make a lot of money in college. And I'm happy for them. Why shouldn't they?
Well, I'll give you an example. Take like Bijan Robinson, who's as a true sophomore, has a very good chance of being in the Heisman race. If he don't get hurt, he's going to be in the Earl Campbell conversation. He's going to be a very wealthy man before he ever takes his first NFL snap.
As he should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're when they're selling those jerseys, they may not be putting his name on it, but they know who they're buying.
Well, not only that, now they can put his name on it.
Yeah,
and you're in a position now, and talk about jerseys. I mean, obviously Oregon is known for their jerseys, right? And in the past, we've bought numbers based off of the players, and it was no joke. I mean, it's not as if Oregon was stupid about it. LaMichael James is 21. They sold a ton of his jerseys. In fact, I think his jerseys are the most sold, even beyond Marcus Mariota's.
What an exciting running back! Incredible.
Yeah, he's. We need another LaMichael James at Oregon. That'd be a lot of fun. But my point is, you think about that. They knew what numbers these players were taking and purposely ordered the jerseys, and the players back then saw none of it. And so now that's changed. Now, here's
a little question I got while I'm thinking about it. These players and these teams that lost stuff because of violations of maybe selling an autograph or whatsoever the deal was, should their records be restored? Should Reggie Bush's trophy be given back to him? That's a very legitimate question.
Reggie Bush is the greatest running back I've seen in my generation. The stuff he did on the field at USC, even against Oregon. I mean, we were number like 3 or 4 in the country when they beat us like 40-10. Like that USC team, when he won the Heisman, I don't care what happened off the field. He won that trophy and put those stats up on the field. It's not as if he was taking performance-enhancing drugs, right? He wasn't on steroids. He wasn't doing stuff that he should have been doing to give himself a competitive edge on the field. So to me, if that's all fair, I don't give a shit if he got a Ferrari. Reggie Bush is a great example of this. Yes, he should absolutely be reinstated. These players, remember, had their age range and the people they're around. I'm sure we made some very dumb decisions in college too. And, being able to go back and say, hey, not only are you forgiven for these, but now, we need to restore you to the where you were. Reggie Bush is a great example of that. He needs to be put back on that pedestal because the stuff he did on the field for USC in those years was absolutely mesmerizing.
Yeah. Kind of like, hey, you're going to get a misdemeanor because you had a joint on you in 1972. Take that away now.
Yeah, exactly. The world changes. The world evolves, and things aren't what they were 15 years ago. That being said, Reggie Bush is still somebody in my mind that stands out dramatically with this. That should not have ever been stripped of his Heisman Trophy. That to me is just a low blow. There's no need for that. And believe me, Oregon is our biggest rival in the Pac-12 is USC still. This is coming from a Duck. I still do not believe that he deserved that.
The problem is he gave it back. He gave it back. Now he can't take it back. Now that what he did is not illegal anymore or against the rules. I don't. It was never illegal. I don't believe.
Make an exception for the guy. You know what I mean? Like we're living in unprecedented times, uncharted waters. Set a precedent right now. Reggie Bush, we are sorry. Here's your Heisman Trophy back. You're welcome back into the fraternity. Here you go. To me, that's the response the Heisman Trust needs to have at this point, because
they've already said they wouldn't. They wouldn't.
That's a bunch of crap, man. They need to treat him as the Heisman winner that he was, because anyone that remembers watching him play, he was absolutely unstoppable. And it's a shame that the Heisman's treating him like that. But what are you gonna do? It's
real quick before we get all our other stuff is it Bryce Young? Is that the new Alabama quarterback?
I don't know Alabama's new quarterback.
I believe it's Bryce Young. Yeah. Well, it's just crazy how Alabama. This kid hadn't taken a snap, and they're the unanimous number one. and you know what? I'm not going to fall trap to saying, oh, well, they have a new quarterback, because quarterbacks are interchangeable with Nick Saban's offense.
Well,
that's why they don't have great ones in the pros.
Nick Saban is the exception to that, and any other school, you need to have a solid play caller, and you need to have a good game manager and someone who's athletic. Alabama really, with the exception of Tua, really hasn't had the need for that. You look at the way their team's stacked; it's as close to an NFL roster as you're going to get in college football.
Although that being said, the perfect quarterback fell to Bill Belichick. It's like, sure seemed rigged to me.
Almost as if they planned it. It's shocking how it works,
absolutely.
Right?
So nobody goes up and trades for this kid that has kind of the tools that Brady had when he was a rookie, and he falls right into it. Okay, well, I guess maybe it's better off if New England's winning the NFL.
It's the rich get richer, Tim. That's the way it goes, brother, and it's never going to end.
Nope.
That's how it all plays out. Speaking of rich getting richer, your Horns are going to the SEC. Is that next year, right? 2022.
Well, no, actually, it's set for 2025, but we can buy it out. I think it's 70 or 80 million to buy it out, but they got to look at those 3 years. It's cost them $80 million, but they're probably going to make $200 million. So go ahead and spend the $80 million to make another $120 million on top of that. So
yeah, if I'm Texas, I get out of the Big 12 as fast as I possibly can.
Yeah, cause it's gonna crumble before they even leave. So they're going to be let out of it anyhow.
Yeah. So and that's a good segue. So this is, and in my mind, we're looking at the end of the Big 12. I just don't think. The remaining teams in that conference, with the exception of maybe Oklahoma State, would have the clout to be able to stick around, to be able to keep the Big 12 relevant. Iowa State's having a good run right now. They got a great head coach. You look at TCU, they're always going to be competitive. Baylor's going to be competitive. Absorbing a team like Houston would help. Maybe bringing in SMU now, they're kind of coming back. Stuff like that. There are opportunities there, but that doesn't put them at the same level of pedigree of having an Oklahoma and a Texas in the Big 12. It just doesn't happen. And not having a name brand for your conference, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. So rumor, there's rumor mills everywhere right now, but rumor has it that your Pac-12, Big 12, and the Big Ten are possibly looking at realigning. Do you think there's some truth to that? Do you think it'll just be rescheduling stuff, or do you think they could actually become a conference?
Well, there's serious talks happening about it. From what I understand, it's the ACC, Big Ten, and the Pac-12. And, okay. and what that would tell me is that the Big 12 is probably going to dissolve, and each conference from there is going to take specific teams that are regionally applicable, right?
So you said it's the ACC. So then probably if that happens, then you're probably going to see – so it's not the Big Ten.
It is the Big Ten. Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12.
And what about the Big 12?
Well, that's just it. The ACC and Pac-12 and the Big Ten, if they're all having conversations without the Big 12 involved – What that tells me is, without coming out and saying it, the Big 12 is toast. Really.
So they'll probably take someone will probably take Oklahoma State. Someone will probably take Iowa State, and then the other teams will probably be in the new Division II when it's all said and done.
Yeah, you would think. I could see a team like West Virginia going to the ACC regionally. That makes sense. I could see, Oklahoma State being absorbed in the Big Ten, Kansas State, joining the Big Ten, Iowa State maybe joining the Pac-12. It'd be nice to see, the Pac-12 make a play for TCU just to get the Dallas market a little bit. So there's it's gonna be interesting how the realignment comes together with all that. There was even some talk of the Big Ten talking to Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA about bringing them into the Big Ten.
Well, if these conferences get up 16, 18 teams, it's just going to end up sooner than later. They're going to have a 50-team conference, and they're going to have an East, West, Midwest. They're going to have different divisions within it, and probably this won't. What we're talking about in totality probably won't happen for 10 years. But it's on its way.
Oh, it's on its way, and it's going to happen at some point. You and I both know. I mean, we're going to look back and, talking about this podcast and what we do and predictions that we've made that have absolutely come true. It's going to happen. You're going to have the have and have-nots. You're going to have, like you said, and I honestly think it's less than 40. I think it's going to be 20 to 25 teams that play in the elite of the elite college football, and then you're going to have your subdivision. And then you're going to have your third subdivision, and then 2A from there. The way it's set up now, I can see exhibition games taking place. So, for instance, a great example of that would be Oregon State is not anywhere close to being prepared to play at the level Oregon is financially, right? And so they still want to keep the Civil War going intact because it's a 110-year tradition. So you do an exhibition game, start the season with Oregon State. You do that. I could see that happening across college football and that being a consistent thing. I think this is also going to force Notre Dame to have to join a conference long term. I don't think Notre Dame's going to be able to survive playing an independent schedule if the rest of the brand names in college football are all joining together. And
especially if they don't, at some point in time, they need to win another national championship to start being relevant. Here's a question. As we've been a proponent for expanding the playoffs for quite some time, and they're talking about going from 4 to 12. Here's my theory on it, or my take on it is I don't like a 12 team. The reason I don't like a 12 team is because I don't believe any team should be getting a bye. I don't believe that these college kids. I don't believe that one team should have to play another extra game. I think they should either go to 8 or just go ahead and go to 16.
I'm actually with you 100%, man. I think 8 teams is perfect for college football. Because you're splitting hairs outside of the the top 8, right? And in years past, the last 3 years particularly, we've seen teams that are all in the top 8, which would make a fantastic playoff.
Right.
Now, that all being said, Alabama's probably still going to win, but
right. Last few years that you had at 4, 5, and 6, it could have been interchangeable.
Right.
But once you get to 8, 9, or 10, they're not going to win. Yeah, they may make a run with a game, but they're not going to win it all.
I've been saying it forever. You've been saying it forever too. In my mind, the right way to do this is you take the top 8 teams, okay? You have got to win your conference to be considered, and you also have to be the division champion in that conference to be considered. I don't want to see the SEC get 5 teams in there simply because they play in the SEC. To me, that's ridiculous. And I'll give you a good example of this upcoming year. And we can move into conference champions here a little bit. I truly believe Mac Brown has it going at North Carolina. And I can see North Carolina with their schedule, who they're playing, how their season's going to come together, competing big time this year because they avoid Clemson on their schedule. Their toughest game is against Notre Dame the night before Halloween. But outside of that, their schedule is really winnable for that team. I can see them being undefeated, getting into the ACC conference, losing to Clemson, more than likely. But here's the thing. If they run the table, lose to Clemson by a touchdown, right? In my mind, if the spot's still there, they should be considered for the college football playoffs if we're talking the 8-team playoff, right? Whereas they might miss out. With the SEC, you do that with Georgia. Georgia's absolutely getting in. And so it's to me it's one of those things where it's like at some point you have to acknowledge the competitive nature of these other power conferences outside of what the SEC does. And I'm not taking anything away from the SEC. They are the most powerful conference in college football. They're consistent in that. But to devalue other teams that maybe only have one loss in the season, and maybe it's a close loss in a conference championship, to not put them in that mix, that's what worries me about not setting a maximum team limit per playoff, right? That's what I'm getting at. I think in order to keep it consistent and keep some parity in there, you have to take the two best teams from the conference and let them square off in the playoffs. But also that those teams had better have won their division. It's absolute bullshit to put a team in that didn't win their division or their conference.
I think it's going to go to 12 games. I really think they're going to do a 12 game. And I think after a few years, they'll go to 16 because they're not going to want these teams to have to play an extra game to get to the national championship game.
Yeah, I get it. Hey, listen, I'm all for a playoff system. Believe me. I mean, we've been dying for this forever in Division I. And, being able to do the playoff thing, to me, the champion that wins a college football playoff is a much more legitimate champion than any other time we've ever had it in college football. You're putting them in a situation where they are playing the elite of the elite teams at the peak of those team seasons. There's a big difference from a team, how they start September 1, August 30th, to how they're playing in the end of December, right? The team's had an entire, season to gel, understand the playbook. Kids have grown up, they've matured. You know what I mean? Like, there's a big difference in how teams play. And so for a team like Alabama or Clemson to do what they've been able to do is so incredibly impressive. And to me, college football is at such a level now of being competitive with how the kids are being brought up nowadays, right? Where they got camps from my kids' age, which is 5 years old, all the way on up, to all the competitive nature it takes to get to that point and then to compete at that level. To me, that's more impressive than NFL football. It's remarkable to see these teams do that. So I guess what I'm getting at with my tangent here is going to 16 teams, you're going to still have the cream rise to the top. It's just gonna happen. And I would not be surprised one bit, as long as Nick Saban's at Alabama is going to be in the conversation for a national championship. Every single year. Just when we think he's slipping, he comes back and runs the table and wins it.
You could possibly have, when you go to the 16 teams, you could possibly have a team that started 0-2 and ran the table from there on out. And like you said, they've become a different team than they were when they were 0-2.
Absolutely.
That could happen.
Absolutely. You think about Oregon's a great example of that this year. And we can move into Oregon's season prediction. Oregon, we have a top 5 defense in the country, period. We are so freaking stacked on defense. It's mind-blowing. The issue with Oregon, though, is not going to be their defense. It's going to be the quarterback. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We have Anthony Brown, which is a sixth-year senior out of Boston College, who looked okay in moments last year. But then you also have Ty Thompson, which was a 2-time Arizona Player of the Year, 2-time state champion MVP, 5-star quarterback that came out of Arizona, competing as a true freshman for the starting job at Oregon in fall camp. And so you have it. That's a huge difference, right? You have a 6-year senior and a kid. And so to me, that level of just mystery right there is very difficult to look at our season and see how we're going to do. Calling it now, personally, I think we go 10-2 and win the Rose Bowl. I think we have the talent and the depth to do that. I don't know if we get by Ohio State in the shoe. I know they're having some early on issues internally, but it's Ohio State. They're such a machine at this point. It kind of is to not pick them is a little bit of a goofy scenario. But still, though, my point is, you have a 10-2 Oregon team at the end of the year, conference champion, right? Let's say they slip up on a Pac-12 game, but it's a good team. At that point, that team, to me, should be in the conversation. But they're not going to be, because we play in the Pac-12. Right.
We kind of mirror y'all as far as quarterback situation because we have Casey Thompson who came in, if you remember, in the Alamo Bowl last year. Ellinger got hurt, and
right.
Thompson come in and scored 55 points. Of course, he did have a little help because Bijan Robinson was running all over people. But we also have the other quarterback is named Hudson Card, and I've talked to him about him on this program. He's 5-star. He's a redshirt freshman, and it's if Thompson does start, it'll be for a game or two. Hudson Card is taking the first team snaps, and he's going to be the future quarterback there. I don't believe just because you look good in the bowl game that you automatically get the nod next year. The best quarterback should play on the field.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that seniority should not equal who starts. And you talk about how these kids are getting better and better, younger and younger. And, I mean, good grief, man. You have a guy like Trevor Lawrence. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
Good grief. Like, put him on the field. Like, let him go.
Yeah, and I remember when that was a controversy for a second, and that lasted about 2 games when he came in.
It was very quick. How do you see Texas season going this year?
I'm gonna go 9-3, but I'm hoping 10-2. We start out with Louisiana Lafayette, who is a very good team. They're 23rd in the country. I think we can get them at home. I'm a little nervous about the Arkansas game. I think Arkansas is going to be a much improved team, and it's at Arkansas.
Yeah.
And of course, I just don't know if with our new offense and everything getting, Oklahoma's going to be exceptional. I don't know if we can beat them. We'll see. I mean, that game, you never know which way it's going to go. But Oklahoma's looking like they're going to have a hell of a team.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler, I think, is coming into his own there. He's gonna. I think he's gonna do really, really well at Oklahoma this year.
It took him a couple games to get there. This kid's on fire now.
Right, and that's just it. How good's Oklahoma's defense though? In the past 5 years, they've looked pretty horrible, and that's been their Achilles heel. Is their offense can throw up some crazy numbers, but they're also giving up 30 points a game. You do that. I mean, you're going to lose games. Like, no matter how good your offense is, you're going to drop a couple games. And so if their defense is improved, then they're going to be tough to beat. So do you have Oklahoma winning the Big 12?
I have Texas and Oklahoma playing in the Big 12 championship, and we'll go from there. I have them winning the regular season, and we'll see how they're both playing at the same time. Going back over I'm going to go with SEC real quick.
Yeah.
Man, I'm not going to buy into them, but, man, with that quarterback coming back at Georgia, they sure look good.
Oh, God, here we go again.
Well, I mean, you're very familiar with the quarterback, and he's a hell of a quarterback. I don't think he should have ever left SC, but that's okay,
I just it's difficult for me to get on the Georgia hype train because I've been burned so many times by them, and I can't imagine what it's like to actually be a fan of Georgia, knowing how damn close you've been so many times.
Look at the national championship game. Tua comes in and throws a 50-yarder to win it.
Dude,
it's like they had that game won, and of course Nick Saban did what Nick Saban does. He pulled the right string and brought Tua in and won the game.
Smart. I honestly, I think this is Georgia's division to lose this year. I don't know if Florida's going to be nearly as good as people are making them out to be. But man, I know A&M's getting some preseason love here, but still though they got to go through a tough division with Alabama and like you said Arkansas, and let's not forget about LSU. I don't. How do I put this? I don't see anyone in the SEC being at the depth level of Alabama.
Well, Arkansas. Arkansas, A&M. We thought they should have got the nod as the fourth team. Talking about adding teams to the playoffs, me and you both thought that they should have got in.
Yeah.
very few teams, maybe except for North Carolina, Miami, Clemson, the big teams in Oklahoma, a lot of them have brand new quarterbacks, and that's the big unknown.
Right. Well, and this is a year like that where the only real quarterback you know about is Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, DJ, I can't pronounce his last name.
At Clemson.
We know him because of the how he played when Sunshine was hurt last year. I had COVID, not hurt.
Right. I have Alabama winning the SEC. I honestly think that Oklahoma better be weary of Iowa State. I think Iowa State's going to compete for the Big 12. I don't know if they can win it, but I think they're going to compete for it. I think the Big 10 is going to come down to Penn State and Ohio State, although Northwestern and Indiana might make a little bit of a scream this year. The SEC is all about the Tar Heels and all about Clemson. I mean, really. And
we're going to have to look at a team that's outside, that's a very good team, and they're starting high enough where they have a chance to get in at Cincinnati.
Cincy, man. Yeah.
They're good. They're good. I think they're starting number 7.
Yes, I'm looking at the rankings right now. They're at number 8. I'm just looking at their schedule. They've been right there, too, for a minute. They've been doing it. They play back-to-back tough games. They play IU at IU. They play Notre Dame at Notre Dame. If they make it through those 2 games and they run the table, and you've got to put them in the playoffs. You just have to.
They're in. They'll be a top 2 or 3 team probably. Because Notre Dame's going to be Notre Dame. They're going to be good. I don't know if they can ever get over the hump. And part of Notre Dame, and this may change. Notre Dame, they don't bend on their rules. You got to have a certain SAT score and et cetera to get in. And they may have to change this all with the NIL and everything. They may have to change at some point in time. They may have to change to try to finally get over the hump to win a national championship.
Yeah. We'll have to see. I mean, I'm not sure if they can. Not with Kelly there. He's not going to win a national championship at Notre Dame. I think to win a national championship at Notre Dame, you need somebody that's outside that whole mindset of Notre Dame to come in and just be different. Because, how do I put this? Harbaugh's not working out at Michigan, okay? It's not going to work at Michigan. Michigan is dead. And it wasn't working at Texas, and take your Texas hat off for a second and be honest. There have been flashes of Texas of old, but Texas has to be willing to evolve, and that's what they're doing with Sarkisian. I honestly think Texas is making the right decision and starting to move a direction. All these other successful programs, with the exception of Alabama and Ohio State, okay, which I will put those guys in a league of their own, you have to be willing to change. Notre Dame has not been. And they're competitive, but they're not going to be elite. It's just not going to happen with the mindset they have now. And I think as it grows, it'll get better.
Like I said, they you have to have certain GPA, et cetera, to be able to qualify. And this goes right back to, hold on, you're not recruiting these kids to be to be scholars. You're recruiting them to be football players. So if they're going to ever get over the hump, they're going to have to loosen a little bit, because there's a lot of kids that just are on that cusp that they won't even look at.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. Like, they need to understand, especially now with NIL. Yes, are they technically student athletes? Yes, but this is also now a business decision, and you have to be willing to adjust to that. Can Notre Dame do that, or is Notre Dame still stuck in their ways? Time will tell. And I honestly, as much as I dislike Notre Dame on a personal level, I do hope they adjust to that, because having a brand name like Notre Dame strong in college football is good for the sport. Just like having all the brand names consistently competitive are good for the sport. The only reason why they started number 9 this year is because of their name. If you look at the same team record and everything like that, you would have put them at like 15 or 16. And so it's to me, it'll be interesting to see. But man, how great is it that we're sitting here? It's August 18th right now, and we're talking about college football. We're talking about a full season We're talking about full stadiums. We're talking about getting this piece of our world back and being able to enjoy it. I'm just excited.
Yeah, I hope this Delta variant's going crazy, and I think it'll level off, and we're gonna have fans in the stands, and we need this year very badly.
Well, we all need it on a personal level, on a business level. College football, it's funny. It's a personal enough thing where it helps people cope with the day-to-day BS they deal with in life, and being able to take in a football game on a fall Saturday and be able to have a few beers and barbecue or go to the games and enjoy yourself. Life isn't just about, making it through each day. It's about having those experiences and having fun outside of the basics you have to do, and college football being back is very healthy for America. Not to sound so cliche and teary-eyed about it, but it's a big deal, and we need it. We need it back, man. So it's good that we are.
People need that tailgating back. There's the traditions and sports in general. We need sports back. Sports is something that helps our country keep some normalcy.
No, exactly. And normalcy is something I think we all could use a good helping of these days. So next week we will be back with week 0. We got some games to talk about, which will be fun. Going to do a little bit more of an in-depth dive to Texas and Oregon, how we look at that schedule playing out for both teams, because this is Cows and Quacks after all. So we are going to talk a little bit about that. And we'll start our pick'em next week. But until then,
adios,
amigos.